I want to bring in Elise Labott, an Edward R. Murrow Press Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and the host of Cosmopolitics on Substack. Thank you for being here. Elise, I want to analyze this moment because we appear to be seeing a shift in attitude right now towards Israel, even among Western allies. But I guess the question is, even with these tensions, is it going to change anything?
I don't know that it's going to change anything. And I mean, obviously, this horrible attack that happened on this Jewish center in Washington this week, I think, made everybody take a little bit of pause. And it'll be interesting for me. I'm looking to see what happens now, because a lot of the rhetoric around the French, the British, they were, taking a lot of steps. The British said that they were going to halt trade talks with Israel. The French were possibly talking about some sanctions. Canada has been very tough. And after that attack, you kind of saw Israel say, well, your rhetoric is really what's causing this to happen. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you can criticize Israel's policy on one hand and not be anti-Semitic and launch an attack at a Jewish center on the other hand. But I do think it's going to maybe cause these countries, they're not going to give up their opposition to how Israel is prosecuting the war in Gaza. But I do think the way that they talk about this, I think it's made everybody, take a pause, at least for the time being. As the war continues and as Israel continues to, have civilian casualties in Gaza, I don't think it's going to let up. And more countries are saying that they're going to recognize a Palestinian state, that they're going to take actions against Israel. Now, that doesn't really do anything for Palestinians because a state is land and it's, a certain amount of autonomy. But the international community is certainly growing increasingly frustrated with the way Israel is prosecuting this war.
And, Axios reporter and CNN analyst Barak Ravid is reporting that Trump told his aides to tell Netanyahu he wants the war in Gaza wrapped up. But obviously, conflict over Gaza has been going on for decades. Is there room for a political solution in this moment? Even without, I guess, solving the decades of conflict that led up to October 7th, for example?
Well, there could be a political agreement, right now while we're on the air, if Hamas was going to release the remaining hostages. I think that would be some space for a political argument. I might say, and, obviously Barack has the best sources, and if Trump did, likely did say that to his aides, you may remember, though, that he did say that before the war. He said that when he was, before the election. He said to Netanyahu, and certainly in that period while after the election, before the inauguration, he said, wrap it up, do what you got to do. I'm paraphrasing here, but said he wanted this war ended by the time that he started. And there was a lot of work by the incoming administration to try and get a ceasefire going. So I think President Trump really does want to see an agreement. He's willing to put, his political capital towards that. But if Netanyahu is not, and Hamas are not going to kind of take the actions that either one needs, if Hamas isn't going to release the hostages and Israel isn't going to allow more aid to get in and, stop some of the assaults, certainly it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, and we have seen that attitude from Trump even with the Russia-Ukraine war as well, hoping that it would get done within the first few days of him being in office, which obviously has not happened. I want to get your take on the U.S.-Iran nuclear talks right now as well, because the U.S. is insisting Tehran dismantle its nuclear program, which Iran says it will not do. How likely is it, just based on what we know so far, how likely is it that there will be a deal? And do you think we will have any substantive differences from the JCPOA negotiated, I guess, over a decade ago to this point?
Well, the JCPOA allowed Iran to enrich to a very high, I don't exactly remember the exact level, but it was certainly a lot higher than even Iran is talking about now. I mean, you need to enrich uranium at a pretty high level to get the minimum amount of enriched uranium. Now Iran is talking about 20%. You'd need a lot of enriched uranium at 20% to get a nuclear weapon. So I feel like maybe, President Trump always starts with his maximalist approach, and then he goes a little bit lower. I can see an agreement where maybe Iran would be able to enrich to a tiny amount. I may say that, both sides, according to reports, are considering this interim framework rather than a comprehensive deal, because there are, and I know CNN has even reported that there's some intelligence that Israel is trying to, look for a strike if these talks don't produce anything. So maybe an interim framework could buy a little time. And Iran is also proposing that the U.S. builds nuclear reactors in Iran and gives the U.S. skin in the game in an Iranian civil nuclear program. So I think that there are a lot of ways that there could be a deal that's probably a little bit tougher than the JCPOA, but certainly not, this maximalist position that President Trump is looking for right now.
Sure. Elise Labott, really appreciate the conversation on a number of fronts. We hit a lot today. Thanks for being here.